Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor. I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Now, yesterday we talked about not kissing and telling. Day before we talked about memes. Today I'm going to reference both of those whilst we talk about trust, and one of the reasons why trust is so important. Because ultimately, without trust, there isn't a relationship. There's no glue holding the whole thing together, because you need to trust each other. Otherwise, sharing those intimate moments just isn't going to happen. Sharing those connective moments aren't going to happen. Sharing those very vulnerable and open behaviors with one another, and those thoughts and feelings with one another also isn't going to happen. In which case, let's take a look at this from DVEI. Dominance, yeah, fine. You might have some dominance, some direction, some control of path within the relationship. Fair enough. Variety, you're not going to have as much variety. And in fact, to be fair, you won't have as much following of the same direction if you don't trust one another, because you won't be willing to go with one another. But in terms of variety, again, you're not necessarily going to be able to trust the person that you're with, and so as a result, not trusting the person that you're with means not trusting them with your well-being, which means, again, not looking to do as many varied things with them, because you can't necessarily trust them. Oh, I enjoy this, let's go do this. No, I don't trust you enough to come out the other side. Emotion, without there being trust involved, there's not going to be any emotion, because you're not going to be showing off that vulnerability and so on. Immersion, without trust, you're not going to be able to suspend your worries, your concerns, your fears enough to actually just enjoy the moment. So that's just out the window. So without trust affecting the various composite parts of a healthy relationship, it causes a collapse. And so today I want to go through 7 points that should definitely help support trust and help it grow within a relationship. And as said, I'll be referencing some other stuff from the last couple of days probably as I talk through, but otherwise we got these 7 points, so let's jump into it. The first one is defining boundaries. I've talked about boundaries before in the past. I've talked about their importance, but just to sum it up, sometimes there are things that are deal breakers. There are things that are going to cause people to crack and to not be able to cope anymore. If you're in a relationship, you need to share those with each other, as well as just the conventional kind of, oh, if you cheat on me, then that's the bottom line and I'm done. There have to be those defining boundaries. There have to be those things that are immovable. You might have to be a little flexible with some of them, because obviously your situation and circumstances change over time, but otherwise, you need to have those things that you stand for, that are acceptable to you and that are unacceptable to you, and they need to be spelled out. This is where you have a lot of couples going, oh, well, I didn't know that was going to do this, and it's like, well, was there any discussion about it? Because if there was no discussion about it, you're not psychic, so how are you ever going to work out what the other person wanted and didn't want? There has to be that discussion in there, but as a result, you need to have those defined boundaries, and you need to have them defined for yourself even before you go and communicate them to your other half. Because think about it this way: if you're let's take this in a very extreme example where trust is kind of paramount. Let's say you're in a couple who's in either an open relationship or you're swingers or something like that. Trust is the only thing that's going to hold you together when tested in those situations where you're potentially with other people, or where you're going off and doing other things, where you aren't necessarily always in each other's line of sight, kind of thing. More figurative line of sight than necessarily kind of real line of sight, literal. But as a result, if you don't have those boundaries spelled out, then your openness to that kind of relationship may lead you to being used, where you are literally being used for your resources or for your emotional attention, your emotional support, whilst you're getting none in return. And there has to be that to and fro. And because you don't have those boundaries strongly enforced, strongly in place, you could be taken advantage of, you could be hurt by it, while someone else gets the best of every world that they want to dip their foot in. In which case, know what those boundaries are. Even before you need to communicate them, spell them out for yourself. If you need to, write them down. So you've got a record, so you have that moment of clarity, you sit down, you work your way through it, you ask yourself some questions about it. What am I going to be happy with? What do I not want in my relationship? What would force me to have enough and leave? All of those kind of things. Have that discussion with yourself. Even if you're single, have that discussion with yourself so that you know for when you get into a different state. The next thing is that when it comes to the communication aspect, when it comes to the talking aspect, and we'll talk about the talking aspect in full last because it involves everything around this. But when it comes, sorry, I got an itchy nose. When it comes to the discussion around boundaries and discussion around differences of opinion and thought around those kind of limits on where trust is either maintained or broken, going into it, you need to expect differences of opinion. What's acceptable to one person might not be acceptable to another, and vice versa. In which case, you need to expect those differences of point of view and look for compromises. If there are things that are just absolutely, you can't change on, you don't want to change on, they are hard limits, fine, maintain those, but then look for wiggle room around them or ways for it to be managed so that both of you maybe not get all of what you want, but that you get some of what you want. And obviously this changes. I can't really go into more specifics on the differences of opinion because it can go back and forth. People have all of their own specifics, and so I have to be unfortunately vague. But within this point, though, you have to also expect that things will change over time. In which case, it's good to have these discussions kind of every so often, but keep them shorter. Yeah, touch on the immediate point that relates to the immediate thing, and be appreciative of those changes of the points of view. And this is why when those changes are coming about or whatever else, it's important to review. Even me with Hannah, where we're ages apart and all the rest of it, so there is a lot of trust involved there because she's living her life, I'm living mine, but we want to be together, so there's that trust that has to be maintained. We check in with each other on stuff so often. It's just a case of going, you said this thing in the past and it's not come up in a while. I'm still happy with it and everything, but you've changed in your life, or you've become happier in this area and unhappy in this area. Is this thing still something that's there, that boundary, or has something changed? And I don't know why I said it that way, but it's a case of asking those questions, just checking in, because also if you care about the person that you're with and you care about your relationship, you should be checking in with each other anyway, just to make sure that you're alright. Oh, you've not mentioned this in a while, but you were talking about it non-stop for ages. And I know that we've both been busy and stuff, but is it still something that's on your mind? Just check in. Because again, whatever that thing is could very well lead to all manner of unforeseen circumstances. So, checking in, making sure that you appreciate the change over time. As said, we've got those 6 big stages of intimacy that people go through, and each one entails pretty sweeping changes at times. So, just make sure you're checking in. The next one is that when it comes to trust, when it comes to especially trust within relationships where you've got a pure, straightforward focus of your interactions with one other person, that's not an awful lot to keep kind of track of. You need to be mindful. You need to keep a good kind of awareness of what you've learned before. Yeah, both from previous relationships and from the relationship that you're in. Recognize what your partner is saying and doing when certain things happen. If you know that they're lying and then they're lying about something that seems out of sorts, then that would be something to question. It could be that they've been spending every night working late and lying to you about it because they're prepping for your surprise birthday party, or it could be something far, far, far worse in terms of your relationship. But again, if you've had those discussions around the fact that you hate fucking surprise parties, then there's a good chance that won't be the case, and so it narrows things down. But again, you need to recognize what you've learned, because learning, as I've said in other videos, is huge in terms of its impact, and you should always be learning from your partner. You should always be learning about the way that you are changing, the way that they are changing, and the way that the relationship is changing over time. But when you see something and you're not sure what it means, ask a question. And then if there's an inconsistency later, challenge that inconsistency. There are lots of things that you can do to keep learning and also then draw from that wealth of knowledge that you've got of your relationship and of yourself to then ensure that you're not, again, being taken advantage of, being messed around, but also making sure that you're not messing someone else around, making sure that the two of you trust each other based on evidence, not just because someone said something. There are going to be times where no doubt things are big, your relationship is called into question, possibly not by you, possibly by someone else, but if that's the case, what have you learned from what evidence do you have, what solid things do you have in your relationship that you can go, actually, no, I know that this is something that I can rely on him or her for. Have that wealth of evidence, that wealth of supporting knowledge that you can draw from to either monitor your own situation, engage with it, challenge it if it needs it, and so on, but also so that you can maintain it from the inside looking out, where you can protect it from things that would maybe try and erode it from the outside. Which again, it's about prizing the person that you're with and enjoying that, and as I said, trust, believing in and relying on them to maintain everything from levels of privacy that are agreed, to agreed actions, to just being themselves. It's all about holding those things together. And if you've not learned what those things really mean, for yourself as well as for them, then, and for the relationship, there are essentially three entities involved in this. Then if you've not learned those things, then you can't monitor it, you can't be aware of what's going on, and so potentially you're going to end up getting hurt, or the relationship and the person that you care about so much are going to get away from you. The next one is we're human, we're mortal, we're not perfect. I reiterate this a lot. You can't expect perfection, and a lot of people don't cut themselves some slack when it comes to trust and things in relationships. So when they mistrust, or when they aren't sure if they can trust their partner, and doubt sets in, they feel guilty. First off, you're human, you're mortal, you're as sensitive to things as anyone else. Don't feel guilty, because everyone has their doubts, everyone has their moments. If you have doubts, then you should be bringing them to the fore, though. You shouldn't be hiding them, because if you're hiding them, if you're going, oh well, I have my doubts, and then I'm hiding them and I'm feeling guilty, that's going to affect the way that you're interacting with your partner. That's the way that they're going to affect the way that your relationship flows. And so without you kind of keeping those things in your head and maintaining them, and then verbalizing them so that they can be dealt with, so that your partner can be aware of them, so that they're part of the relationship to be worked around, rather than just this thing, this smoky mist sat in the back of your head, it doesn't help. Be simple and straightforward, and say them out loud. Explain them to your partner, where the doubts are coming from, why you're feeling them, if you feel good or bad about doubting them, but it's a case of going, look, you've been out every night this week, working late, but also before, when you've worked late, you've still messaged me whilst you're in the office or whatever else. And so now you've not been doing that even when I've been sending you messages. I'm getting worried. I'm not feeling good about this, because I don't know when it's going to end, and I don't know if it's even what you're really doing. And if so, the more likely, someone might take offense to that. Someone might not see that in a positive way. But again, if you've got this idea of discussing your boundaries, discussing things in a very upfront manner, then hopefully they'd be accepting of this. And even if they go, well, it's slightly hurtful that you don't trust me, but I get your point, yeah? In which case you can have that discussion. If they just flip out, then if anything, to me, I'd find that maybe a bit more suspicious, especially if you have addressed it in a very sensible, straightforward, and relaxed manner where you're just asking for their input. Then it would worry me if, me just going, look, I just need to know what you're doing because this seems a bit odd, and then they just blow up. Then that would be something to me that would kind of go, so you're above reproach? I'm not allowed to not trust you at all? I mean, you're as human as I am. There needs to be limits and appropriate levels applied to the amount of emotional response from you and them. But again, accept those doubts, be appreciative of them, and bring them out into the open so that they're part of the relationship so they can be dealt with. The relationship is the thing that is being worked on. It is its own entity that is being hammered together by the two of you working together. Two people working individually but in concert. And so, that's the thing to keep in mind. You're both your own entities, but that relationship is the thing that you are building together, that creature, that anomalous thing, that miasmic being that you two are kind of entering into this relationship with as a kind of bonding element between the two of you. It is its own thing, and you need to monitor it and work with it and nurture it so that it grows and grows through its various stages to be the most fruitful and the most helpful to everybody. But then the next thing is, as I was saying about emotions just a moment ago, you need to keep track of how you're feeling, because your feelings are important. Relationships are entirely built around feelings, which is why you see relationships between people that just it's hard to understand why those people are necessarily together, but they are. And so that's because it's built around feelings, it's built around emotion, it's built around things that a lot of the time don't make a lot of just logical sense. And so fine, that's absolutely fine, but you need to keep track of your emotions. If you're feeling miserable because you're being taken advantage of, or because things are slipping away, or because just you're uncertain, you don't know if you can or can't trust because you've not got that awareness, that knowledge from before, or even if you do and something just seems amiss and you're feeling down about it, you need to keep track of that and you need to kind of monitor it. You need to find peace with emotions like anger and disappointment and stuff like that. And one of the ways that you can do that, again, is by voicing them so that they are there in the relationship so that it can be worked on between the two of you. But at times it's a case of going, look, okay, she's gone out on a girls' night out, or he's gone out to watch the football with the guys, and I miss them. I miss their presence. I don't want to be alone at this time, and so I'm a bit disappointed, I'm a bit angry, I'm a bit upset that they've gone off and done something else. Fine. However, had you already made plans? Had you already done anything? Were there already any agreements? Because if they breached agreements with you or forgot plans or whatever else, then fine, you've got a reason to be angry. If they didn't and they just came home, got changed and went, I'm going out with Dave to watch the football tonight, or oh, so-and-so's just come back from whatever job she's doing now, I'm going out on a girly night with her to catch up and gossip and whatever else. Obviously I'm stereotyping here, but cut me some slack, I'm being vague. In which case it's like those people going off and doing those things, if they didn't have plans with you anyway, if they were completely free and open to do it, then especially if you hadn't tried to engage them going, oh well, tonight could we do this, then if they've made plans, then fine. But you're going to probably experience some of those negative emotions, disappointment, anger, upset. In which case, if you've not got a reason for them, you kind of need to take them in perspective and find a way to just find some kind of a relaxed point with them. And maybe also just go, okay, well, if you're going out tonight, and then, in response to your partner or your time with your partner being taken away, set a date, set a new time for something that you actually want to do with them, and don't let it escape you. That's one of the easiest things to do in response to those feelings. Make sure that you have something to look forward to, so that those feelings can be kind of just moved away and ignored and dropped to one side, because you know that you won't be feeling those feelings as soon as that time rolls round. And be specific with it as well. Make sure that it's a day and a time. After work on Thursday, you're going to come home, and I would like to go and sit in front of a movie and watch whatever and eat a pizza with you. Just enjoy our evening together, just cuddled up. Fine, but again, be specific about it. Make sure that you've got that time, not just for their benefit so that they know when not to double book, but also for your benefit, so that you know like why it is that you can ignore those emotions, those negative emotions and things in that moment, because you've got that point where those negative emotions will be completely removed from you, because you'll have what you want. It's all about just monitoring it and making sure that you're okay there. Now, the next thing, number 6, penultimate one, is you need to be honest about your part in things that don't go well, but as well, because if we're talking about feelings, if we're talking about boundaries, if we're talking about changing situations, there are going to be things that go wrong, and sometimes it's entirely one-sided, like someone going off and cheating, breaching trust in that way. Fine. But if we're talking about what we were saying just a second ago about, someone's gone and made plans when I was hoping to spend an evening with them, but had you told them? Because if you hadn't told them, then you need to be a little bit logical about this. As much as relationships don't make an awful lot of logical sense sometimes, you need to be a little bit logical about this, because if you hadn't told them that you wanted to spend time with them, then how were they supposed to know? In which case, you not getting that time with them, is partly your fault, because you didn't voice the desire to and try and make the plans with them in the first place. If it's an argument around them working late and all the rest of it, and they're obviously hiding something from you, and it turns out to be your surprise birthday party, and you've potentially shaken the whole thing because you weren't sure if you could trust them, and they felt hurt because you weren't trusting them, and all of that kind of thing, then hopefully you would make up over something like that. But at the same time, you need to acknowledge your fault in maybe now you know that there was a reason. Now you have learned something new, as per what we were saying a moment ago in regards to always learning. And so as a result, the thing that went wrong would be the argument, or would be the distrust and the negativity. And so you need to take your part in that, because again, one of the biggest things that erodes trust is when it's always only one person. It can be that one side of the relationship is more prone to those problems due to lifestyle, due to working hours, due to the personality, but it's never going to always be one side, and it might be uneven. It might be 75% one side and 25%, or 25% the other. But then there's also always going to be those where it's between the two of you. There's got part of that 25% and part of that 75% are going to be crossover. So you need to make sure that you acknowledge that when it happens, because otherwise, you both need to move forward in this relationship at the same kind of pace, so that one person isn't being left behind and one person's not going whatever. Like, the rest of your lives can spin off in all kinds of different directions, but within the relationship it's one entity. It has to grow at this one rate, and you guys need, as the ones that are kind of feeding into it, need to grow within that relationship context at the same rate as well. And so, to support it, to help it get there, because it's going to continue to demand more and more, like any growing thing. And so you are going to have to grow with it to be able to supply that more and more. And by growing, you could grow as a person and admit that sometimes it's not your fault, or sometimes when there is fault, you have something that you can kind of work with and learn from as much as your partner does. It's very rare, very, very rare, that it's a long-term relationship that has had a lot of trust and energy put into it, and it's only one side. It's usually much shorter relationships that you see that kind of thing, because that trust, that all of those other emotions and things haven't been poured into it, and it's not made anything solid yet. Even when you're looking at divorce cases where someone has gone and cheated on the other and tried to run away and all that kind of thing, there are usually a set of other issues involved as well, where even if that was the last bad thing on one party's part, there's probably a whole collection of things, and that was just the straw that broke the camel's back, as it were. So, it's worth keeping in mind that it's never, or very rarely is it solely one side or the other, and that compromises and discussion need to happen. And the last point, one that I have reiterated so many times over the last couple of weeks talking about relationships, we need to talk about talking, communicating, making sure that all of this stuff comes out. I've mentioned it in various points that we've already gone through so far in regards to, yes, you need to talk to each other. You need to talk very directly about the things that you're worried about, or reviewing things, just checking in little and often for about, I don't know, the way that work's going, or that thing that they do or don't like, or where that boundary is, or how life is changing now that we've got the kids. Is this still a thing that we do or don't do? All of those kind of questions, just checking in at those points, just making sure that all of the little boundaries and all the checklists and all the other things that you've put in place so far throughout the rest of your time together is still solid, is still where you think it is, because it's, trying to kind of achieve that next level, trying to hit that next goal, going to be difficult when the goalposts keep moving. When it comes to the stuff about doubting each other and the worries that you have, talk about the commitments that you have to each other. Make sure that those are very apparent. That if you want to spend the rest of your life with that person, then you should probably talk about the rest of your life with that person, rather than just going, I want to be here for a good old long while, but I don't see any reason to talk about where we're going, what we're doing, who we want to be, anything like that. I'm just going to be here for the ride. No, actually have a conversation. Sometimes it'll be a difficult conversation. I don't know where I'm going to be in 10 years' time. My partner has chosen a career that knows exactly where they're going to be in 10 years' time. They're a doctor or a teacher or a nurse or whatever else, whilst I'm a salesperson, so I could go up the chain, or I could move to a different place, or whatever else. You can have all those different discussions even though you don't know everything. Yeah? And what are the important parts to the relationship? Does it matter where you're working? Does it matter who you're working with, or why you're working in that place? Probably not. What matters is spending time together, knowing whether or not you want to develop the relationship into a family at any point. All of those kind of things. Those are the things that are important to talk about. Shared views on what you would do as a family, as a couple, as a long-term kind of established social unit. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that needs to be discussed, not the specifics of how you're going to do this or how you're going to do that. That stuff can happen in the time as it requires it, and those are probably usually because they're much more real world, obvious, straightforward. Oh, are we going to buy a house? Are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? Those are usually your more straightforward and easy to cope with kind of discussions to have, because there's stuff that you can tangibly work with. But then also, when it comes to those things that go badly, yeah, you've been distrustful of someone who's literally been hiding stuff from you that you've kind of caught wind of because they were planning your secret surprise birthday party, and you've been very straightforward with them, saying you don't trust them, or that something seems amiss and it's making you nervous, it's making you upset, what's going on? And they're like, I can't tell you, but it's something that's not bad, but I can't tell you, and so I know I'm not helping, but it's afterwards, after you've had that blow up, that worry, that negativity, all of those kind of things, fine, but you need to go and have a talk about what just happened. Check in afterwards and be like, okay, so talk about you as you, though. Yeah? Don't throw it at the other person. Oh, you do this. Oh, well, you always do that, so I always expected the worst. Go, I felt like this. I thought this was happening. I got really worried. Talk about you, because then it also encourages them to share from their perspective. It allows that space to be created where your ideas and their ideas are being pushed into the middle, so that then it's easier to examine them. It's easier for both of you to understand each other rather than just blaming all the time, yeah, or assuming all the time. And so those are the 7 points that I'd bring in here, guys, in regards to building trust in a relationship. Some of them can be hard to do. As I've said in regards to other things, practice is the thing that needs to happen here. You're not going to instantly be able to share everything, always going to be reviewing properly, always going to be following up arguments, bumps in the road, upsets, worries about trusting each other just by calming down, cooling off, and going and having a discussion afterwards. Sometimes you'll miss that discussion afterwards and just roll straight into whatever comes next. You know, it takes practice to get into that kind of pattern of going and checking and going and making sure that things are okay and that those boundaries are in place and that you're both still happy and functional and all working as best as you can to achieve that thing that you both want. And it can be tough. It can be tough, especially when people's lives change and, you know, it might seem like you're being ignored. It might seem like you're feeling miserable. The way to bring those things out and deal with those in the most constructive way is to go and talk to the person that those feelings revolve around. Yeah, life's changed. We're not spending as much time together anymore because we've had kids and we're both working like odd hours and whatever else, in which case we don't have any time together anymore, and it's making me feel miserable. I don't want you to drift away from me. Okay. Don't just say that in your head. Don't just feel sad about it in your head with those thoughts going around. Go and say, look, I'm sad that we don't get to spend time together anymore. Can we find a way to fix this? Yeah? Because the two of you have to work together to fix any of these problems. So, and you're not psychic. You never will be. At least not until a technology reaches a certain limit. So, you know, the only way you can get that far is by opening it up into the air, talking about it. But anyway, guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure that, like me, at times, you've got some absolutely miserable stories about how your trust was abused by partners and people you were with in relationships. I don't so much care about the terrible situations. I wouldn't necessarily want you to relive those, as I'm sure some of them are pretty miserable. But what were the things that you found helped you most to get past those situations? You know, we're talking about trust here. So how did you rebuild trust with someone that didn't trust you anymore? How did you learn to trust someone that you had maybe been a bit distrustful of up until that point for whatever reason? What caused you? What did you find was most helpful afterwards? If something broke down and your trust was horribly abused, did it leave you with issues that took you longer to deal with? And then how did you deal with them? You know, all of these facets I'd love to discuss with you guys down in the comments. I'd love to kind of dig into it, because as I've said in other videos, if you've been affected by it, if you've had a problem, but you found a way past it, there's probably 10 other people, if not more, who are in that situation right now but don't know where to go, and you might be a guiding light to them. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and otherwise I will see you in the video later. Take care. Thank you very much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, found it interesting, then please drop us a like, share this video, and subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the video later. Take care.